Hey everyone, my name is Anthony. I'm one of the creators of Sequin, and today I'm going to be demonstrating using Supabase with Sequin. So Supabase, as you probably already know, is an open source alternative to Firebase. It lets you quickly build full stack web applications on top of Postgres. Sequin is a newer open source project, also very focused on the Postgres community, and it lets you send Postgres changes anywhere. And so for Supabase specifically, it's helpful to think about Sequin as like asynchronous Postgres triggers. So Supabase has some support for edge functions and Postgres triggers, but these have some limitations. So for example, if there's a bug in your code and you don't process the webhook, or if you're down when the webhook is sent, those notifications will get lost forever. And so Sequin can kind of augment workflows on top of Supabase by ensuring that you never miss a message. You can do SQL-based routing. There's replay and backfill support. You can use the language of your choice, like JavaScript, to write your functionality as opposed to writing everything in PLPG, SQL, Postgres triggers, and all sorts of other good stuff. And some common use cases are things like every time a user is inserted into the database, maybe send them a welcome email, trigger some side effects. You can do things like fan out to multiple workers. In this example, whenever an order is created. So again, those asynchronous workflows that are responding to changes that are happening in your database. So to kick us off today, I have a to-do app built already on Supabase here. Here it is. And it's, exactly what you might expect. I can do, begin recording video, I can add it, all your typical stuff that you might find in a to-do app. And of course, as I make these changes are being reflected over here in Supabase. So I can go to the to-do app and we can see these things coming through and being updated right here. So what I'll do in this demo is show how to connect Supabase to Sequin, and the end state will be whenever we make certain changes to the to-do list, we'll have those sent to an HTTP endpoint. So let's hop in here to Sequin. I already have an account. I can hit connect database, and I can insert the details for my Supabase database. You can find the connection settings over in the settings database configuration area. I'll just go ahead and copy this over. So I've pasted everything over. That Sequin's telling me it detected that we're using a Supabase connection. And so because Sequin uses the replication slot on the database to detect changes, it needs to connect directly through to the database. It can't connect through Subabase's connection pooler. So I can just hit this button and it will just convert it over for me. So there we go. That's my direct connection to the database. Great. And I think we can enable SSL here. And now it's giving me the instructions for creating a replication slot as well as a publication. So this is again how Sequin can connect to the database to detect changes. I can take this replication slot, go over here to the SQL editor, and then just run that there. Okay. And then back over here, I can specify which tables I want Sequin to be subscribed to. You can, of course, just do all tables, but for right now, I'll do this and I'll do, I believe the table is named to-dos. There it is. Great. Okay, so we've got the slot, got the publication, and I'm going to go ahead and close that. And now we can go ahead and connect the database. Okay, so we've connected the database to Sequin. The database health is going to show as 2 of 3 until I make a change. It's waiting for replication message to come through to make sure everything's working properly. So optionally, I can come in here and make a little change to make sure we're all connected up. So I can say record demo video. Of course, I could also do this over in the front end there. I think that saved it already. Is that how it works? Or do I have to hit save? Uh, refresh here. Okay, cool. Database is connected. Everything is Everything's working here on the database side. So now I can create a consumer to take changes from database tables and send them to an endpoint of my choosing. So I'll go ahead and hit create consumer. And in this database, this is going to pull in all the Supabase specific tables here, but I can type in to-dos to grab the to-dos table. And I can optionally filter rows from the table based on SQL where conditions. So for example, I could say where is complete equals true, for example, to have only completion events sent to my endpoint. For now, I won't do any filters, but this is a really powerful option for filtering. And now Sequin's going to ask me for what kind of consumer type I want. For the use case of Postgres triggers, you usually want to process changes because when you process changes, you're going to get these discrete change events that happen to rows, and that'll include things like the new and old values, the old values of updates or deletes, for example. So go ahead and select that. You click this to see an example of what those will look like. So here's an insert with the record. You do an update, we'll get the record as well as changes, which contains all the old values of the columns that changed. We'll get the action there, and a delete, we'll get the full old record. That's kind of what we want there for this use case. So we'll hit changes there. Now it's prompting me if I want to have the consumer push the changes to me, or I want to pull from the consumer like an SQS. So for this demo, we'll do an HTTP push, and I can do my push con as the name, and then for the HTTP endpoint, we can of course specify our own endpoint, but just for demonstration purposes, I can hit this button, create and use a new webhook.site endpoint. Webhook.site, if you're not familiar, is just a really good tool for building and debugging webhooks. We'll go ahead and use that website. Doesn't require any authentication or anything like that. Hit create consumer. And so now we're on the consumer page. You can see that we're waiting for some stuff to happen here. The main thing, just waiting for rows to flow so we can make sure the consumer is set up properly, the endpoint is live, and all of that. But you'll see this warning here, and Sequin's basically telling me that the replica identity for my table to-dos is not set to full. And so if it's not set to full, then we won't get that changes payload. Sequin won't be given the old values by Postgres. So I can run this query right here in the database to change that. So alter table full, cool. Go back to the consumer. And I think if I refresh, we'll see that warning clear. Okay. So we can make our first change. Let's go back to the to-do list app. Let's say set up Sequin as a to-do. We'll add that here. And now if we can see that the health checks are passing, so that must mean that the event flowed through the whole system. We can click on this view on webhook.site, and we can see over here the event coming through. So here's the record ID 7. It's not completed yet. The task was set up Sequin. It was an insert, and so therefore there are no changes on it. But of course, if I come back here and I click, whoops, not that one, this one here. I go back to webhook.site, we'll see a few different events for the mistake there. So first here, record demo video. It went from is complete false to is complete true, right? Then I toggled it back, so it flipped back again. And then here, set up Sequin, the changes, it went from is complete false to is complete true. So now we've got this consumer working end to end. And of course, if I want to, I can create multiple consumers off this table. So I can come back in here and I could go back to to-dos. And I could, for example, say, hey, I want to do an is complete equals true consumer. So this consumer only processes to-dos that were completed. And I can come back through here and post. I can say, my con or my completed con for my completed consumer. I can create a new endpoint for this one, just for the demonstration purposes, create the consumer. And now what will happen is if I add a new task, some new task, Of course, my old consumer got that new task because it's listening to everything. But if I go over to view this new consumer, you'll see it's still waiting for that first message because it filtered out that message because it was not a completed to do. And that's why this is currently still pending here. And so if I come back here and complete that task, we'll see it pop over here in this one, the old consumer, and then of course it also popped into the consumer that processes only is complete equals true tasks. One thing we haven't seen yet is what happens if I can't reach the endpoint, right? That's sort of an important differentiator of Sequin that exactly wants processing guarantee. So what we can do is we can go back to our original consumer here, and I will change the endpoint, and I will remove the last zero. Yes, I need to go do that over in the HTTP endpoint. So for this guy here, edit, I'm going to remove the final zero there. So now this endpoint is unreachable. And I will make another change. This one will fail and add that to my to-do list. If we come back here to Sequin, we'll see that this consumer is now failing. We can't hit it. We're getting a 404 back. But importantly, that message is still in Sequin and it is being retried. We're adding logs and graphs soon here, but Sequin has not lost track of this message, which is very important. So if I go back to the HTTP endpoints and then correct it, so it's this one here, right? Let me make sure I get the right one. That was, yeah, 6 minutes ago. And I add that zero back, update it, back to consumers. We see here all is healthy. And you can see that notification that came through over here. This one will fail came through. So that's very important property of Sequin is that exactly once processing. So basically, Sequin is going to send messages to the endpoint. It has a request timeout that's configurable. Right now, it's at 30 seconds. And if it does not hear back within that 30-second period, or if the request fails, that message will be retried until it is processed. So we get those guarantees that are very much the same kind of guarantees you might get in a Postgres trigger, except of course it's happening asynchronously. That's the basic overview of how you can use Supabase with Sequin. You saw how we connected Sequin to our Supabase Postgres database. We created consumers that could filter on specific changes and then send those changes to HTTP endpoints for processing. You saw how Sequin guarantees exactly once processing for that stream of changes. So now you can replace PLPG SQL Postgres triggers or Supabase webhooks with Sequin consumers and HTTP endpoints. Of course, those endpoints can be your API, Supabase Edge functions, you name it. Thanks for watching.